Welcome back, everybody. We're getting our brushes out and we're getting started on our last leg of the blue paint horse. Those are two filberts that I like. That one's a synthetic one, the other one's a hog hair one, and that is the liner brush that I have grown to love. It's pretty small, but I like it. Anyway, welcome back to Blue Paint Horse Studio. I am Tamara Matra. I'm the artist. That's my hand. I wanted to narrate this last final leg of the painting, kind of walk you through some of this stuff, give you something to listen to other than repetitive music tracks. I don't know. Maybe you'd prefer the music. It's hard to tell. Leave a comment. I'll listen to them. Most of them I will listen to. So here I'm layering the forelocks, or the forelock. I think it's just one. I don't think it's plural, even though they usually split in half. There's two pieces of forelock, but I think the forelock is the whole bit that goes through the ears. Yes, another exciting time to hear all the little weird facts that rattle around in my head about horses. You can see that I'm going from a very deep blue in the back. You can tell how many times I'm lightening up as I layer in the hairs. These are not white hairs like the white bits of the mane, so I have to be careful not to go completely white. His mane was not shiny like that. It had a little bit of a sheen, but it wasn't super shiny. And it takes a lot of variations. I really did enjoy doing this painting in blues and monochromatic colors. That was really actually quite wonderful. Taking a break and only studying the values of things instead of, the colors. Do I need to add a little more red? Does this need to be a cool shadow? Is this reflected light? All that good stuff. So it was really a nice break to just work in cool blues. So here I'm starting to work over the eye. Getting all that rendering done. It's a very tricky place on the horse. They have very large folds and muscles surrounding their eyes. They have beautiful expressive eyes, but that's one of the reasons. They can, I think they can see, they might have a blind spot right directly in front of them between their eyes, but they can pretty much see all the way around them on both sides, as they are a prey animal by nature. I have decided, since finishing this painting, I've been kind of living with it a little bit, as we like to do. I don't know, as I like to do. I like to hang with the painting and just look at it from time to time, flip it over, don't stare at it too hard for a little while, and come back to it and see if anything grabs me. I also had my dad look at it, and he has a very discerning eye when it comes to art, which is funny because he's not really any kind of an aficionado or anything like that. He just has a very how do you put it? He can remove himself from the emotion, I guess, is a good way to put it. And he can look at things very critically, in a very good way, very constructive criticism. It's not a negative thing. He's always loved my art and always been a huge supporter of it. And he mentioned the right hand side. You can see how pale the belly is and how happy I was. I had recorded that in the previous video, and he pointed out that it actually should be a little darker because the shoulder on the left is darker and it doesn't look like it's that much farther away. And now that he said it and I've had some time, I'm probably going to go back and darken that because I totally agree. Just a little tidbit from me to you. I have not recorded that. I haven't put it in this video because these videos were already made and edited. So, but I'll probably go back and change that. It's nice to live with your paintings for a little while and get to know them. You get so overwhelmed in the details of them from creating them. I sometimes kind of lose sight. It's good to look at it with fresh eyes. Here I'm just putting in a lot of little details with that tiny little sweet brush that I love. Making sure all those stray hairs coming forward catch the light a little bit. Of course, I did that before I finished all the fur on the forehead. Foreheads in me, a lot of times artists tend to try to get away from or ignore difficult things like ears or noses. And so a good rule of thumb is to actually tackle those things early to start with. It gives you a good perspective, and you have all that momentum at the beginning of a painting where you get super excited about it. So it's always good to go ahead and tackle things that challenge us. And to me, the forehead fur on any animal, I don't know what it is. It's usually just this big plane of fur that's usually different colors. Sometimes, like this horse, it changes direction. There's like a swirl right there in the middle of their forehead, almost like a human's cowlick, you would call it. They have one right in the middle of their forehead. So the fur actually does this swirly thing on the horse. But most animals is just this field of multicolored hair. And for some reason, it's always daunted me a little. So I really do try to pay attention to the ears, because I do like to have detail in my ears. And then I move forward. Instead of right into the eyes, I try to work up the forehead. And at least I'll have that first layer of forehead hair down, because usually I have to come back over it and highlight it. And it helps me out a lot to do it that way. If you have any difficult places in your paintings that seem to always trip you up, I'd love to hear about it. I like artists talk like that. It's interesting to me. Now here, because I have a change of fur color, even though I don't draw in every single tiny little hair, as you've seen, going across the head, I did want to make sure that the hairs that blend right on that edge look like they're going one into the other, so that you can tell there's a change in short fur there. That was a tedious detail that I was very happy to put in there. I think it made all the difference in the world to delineate one color of fur coming into another. Here I'm getting the eyebrows above the eyes. Still haven't dove into the eyes yet. Almost like eating your vegetables before you get dessert. Really watching that reference photo, making sure that I'm building the shapes the way they're supposed to underneath the fur. Skeleton, the muscles. Don't want to make things weird that stand out, that are incorrect. Sweet, expressive eyes. Horses have just the sweetest eyes. It's all those muscles around them. Look at that. What a worried little look. Just those little wrinkles. When we do that, when we wrinkle above our eyebrows, we're, of course, we're worried about something. It's a look of concern. Here, I've got that pupil. The pupil of horses is just like goats. It's a slit that goes to the side. A horizontal pupil. I don't know how to say that. Horizontal shaped pupil. Always work from the darkest, the shadow cast by the lid goes down to where the light actually does enter the iris. So you always blend from dark to light on an eye. If you already know where the highlight is too, it's usually opposite the highlight is the glow in the iris. See, I'm paying very close attention to the shapes. If you can get the eyes right, you really got something. You can see that highlight is opposite that glow on the iris on the bottom of the iris. Little other additional highlights there, make it look wet. Bring it to life. Usually horses have very long eyelashes. For some reason this horse's eyelashes were not very long. And I'm thinking when I get my brushes out to adjust that one side that's too pale, I might actually make the eyelashes longer as well. Just a touch longer. This was actually how the horse was though. As artists, we have that freedom and change things up if we want to. We can make a brown and white pinto blue, among other things. There we go. Got that nice big heavy eyelid all done. Had to shape it a bit. There's no highlight in that eye. It is too far around the bend. Be careful just adding highlights to add highlights. Yes, it's an eye. It doesn't need to be dripping in liquidy unless you're making a more cartoonish character. Very few places on any portrait or animal that are pure, brilliant white, like the highlight of the eye. And sometimes the eyes don't have highlights at all. If you're going for realism, you just pay attention to your, unless, I don't know, I say that, but I've actually put a highlight on something that didn't have a highlight. It just looked like it needed one. For whatever reason, the light didn't catch. You should use your artistic license there. Again, this white is very transparent, so I'm having to build it up. Always going in the direction of the fur, that the fur grows. Refining those shapes. I'm telling you, when I get into this level of detail, I'm in the zone. I have a good time. Comes a vein. Again, you got to be careful with those veins. Make them subtle. Don't make them look like somebody hot glued a string on somebody on the face. And it's hard because you do have to lay in a little bit of shadow, a little bit of highlight. It's quite a little gentle balance with veins. This horse actually had a lot of them further down his nose. You'll see that later. I struggle with it a bit. They go in the opposite direction that the fur growth is. So I did a lot of back and forth with them and just kind of hinted at them didn't make him as pronounced as that one. Working off camera. Just bringing some of those hairs down that I lost when I redid the forehead. Can't stress enough how important watching those reference photos is. There's I'm actually considering doing beginning drawing tutorials. I've been watching some of them on YouTube. I've been looking them up, and I don't really see any that I really like that walk a beginner through some of the exercises, at least that I used to do and that I used to teach. Some people touch on it here and there, but nobody's really, that I can tell, landed on it. Of course, I haven't watched all of them, but I was just thinking of recording my own and seeing how people like them. So when you look at a reference photo, that's all you're doing. You're using your drawing skills. You're seeing as an artist sees. You're not trying to over-interpret what it is that you're looking at. Just getting the shadows where the shadows are. Getting the highlights where the highlights are. Seems simple enough. But when you get a lot of practice in, you can really get into the zone. Really have a good time. Speaking of time zips by. Feels like it stands still. You look up, it's dinner time. You haven't cooked anything. No big deal. It's an amazing feeling. Now, I know I've always said work in the direction of the fur, of course. You see, I'm working on that jaw. I'm not really working in the direction of the fur because the fur bends in the other direction, but it's at such a foreshortened angle on the edge of his jaw that I just wanted to smooth it. Who knows, maybe it would have looked better if I had done the strokes in the direction that the fur grows. A lot of detail right here. This is where those veins were that I was talking about earlier. Not really sure how to tackle them when they go in the exact opposite direction of the fur, so I just kind of tackled them, did the best I could with them. Thank goodness I'm not going to be holding the reference photo right up next to the original. That would be a level of photorealism. I'm not photorealistic though. But if you were a photorealistic artist, that would be really pretty cool. There's probably one that's done that in an exhibit where they have the painting and then they have the photograph right next to it. I'm not out for that level, but that would be pretty cool. I would go to that exhibit. You see there's a lot of back and forth. You go dark, you build up the lights, come back in and do a little dark if you went too light. A lot of medium blues. A lot of back and forth. I feel like it's a very organic process, painting, and that may be kind of silly and obvious, I guess. I don't know, but you really are creating something. So there is a growth, natural growth pattern to it almost, in my opinion. Push and pull like a tide, back and forth until it's right at the sweet spot. And then you try to leave it alone. Try not to piddle with it. Horses have long noses, I'll tell you what. I was putting the fur on that, and then when I got to about this part, in the middle part, I was like, wow. This just goes on and on. See, I had to stand up. Just takes time. Me and my husband were talking today, actually, about it, and he said, we were talking about a singer, and the singer had a gift. He said he has a gift for it. And I get that. I hear that a lot. And I know that it's meant, well, of course. But I had to tell him, he's been practicing singing like that for a long, long time. It takes work to get better at something. Just takes lots and lots of practice. So if there was such a thing as a gift, the gift is perseverance or patience and a passion for it. Oh, 3 P's. Look at that. Perseverance, patience, and passion. But yeah, I guess maybe you could have a gift for those 3 things. Now these are little specks that I'm adding, like the white of the fur was disrupted. I added those in. I thought it was very interesting. Kind of matches the other flank you can see here in the left side of the frame. I thought it looked a little more Pinto-esque. Working there with the blending of the 2 different kinds of colors of fur coming together. There was this one section on the nose that it was broader, a broader blended section than normal. I wanted to see if I could capture it, even though it was a little different. I really add a lot of white to get that white up out of the blue. It just sits on top of that blue. But the beauty of that is that you get to blend it, and you get to leave some things deeper, which is nice. Like right there, I'm going to leave that little area right in the center deeper. So there's a natural line down the center of the face where the fur changes direction. And we're on to the nose. I build the nostrils pretty slowly. Well, obviously not slowly when it's a speed paint, but you can see how I build those nostrils in a minute when I get down to them. There are actually wrinkles that go horizontally across the nose right there where I was painting up top, where I've left the bands. Those are real wrinkles. A horse's nose is very prehensile. They can scrunch it up, do all kinds of stuff with that big lip. And they create those little bands, little wrinkle bands right there. Can you tell I like that detail? I had a good time with that detail. Here I'm getting into the dark of the nostrils. Never be afraid of contrast. Contrast is your friend. Shadows are your friend. Everybody is really comfortable in putting highlights in, but you can't see the highlights if you don't have those shadows. Very yin and yang. Can't have the light without the dark. Now, if I was trying to paint this nose out of my imagination, I would have never been able to paint it correctly. Even though I've seen probably hundreds of horse noses. Goes back to the idea that good, quote-unquote, good artists can paint out of their imagination. You can probably paint something out of your imagination, but I don't know about realism. Also, tracing helps a lot. If you were ever struggling with a body part, the masters used to do this. They used to do studies. You'll see the sketchbooks that Da Vinci has and such, where they just take an arm and they draw it over and over again, and they move it and they see if it looks better from this angle and all that good stuff. That's repetitive. They're not tracing it. Perhaps tracing is similar to that, and it helps you out a lot. Suddenly the shape of something. I used to have to do that with noses and lips. I used to trace them because the shape of them was just so odd to me. What you think is the shape of lips or a nose is when you're younger, you think you know what they are, and then you realize you don't know anything at all about their structure when you try to paint them and form them or draw them. So sometimes tracing helps, and get that symbolism out of your head and get the reality in there. Just getting all the little lips, little fuzzy lips, velvety noses. It's a good day at work, painting velvety noses. I don't know. I feel like, I don't even know. There is fur on the nose. That has to be fur, right? But boy, when you touch them, it's like velvet. It's like nothing's there except soft skin. And then they sneeze on you. Good times. Bringing up the whitest highlights. A little bit of a glow in those nostrils. All those little wrinkles. You'll see it where I'm not really up there. I was kind of swishing the brush around in a bit of a circle. I call it scumbling, where I'm not really just splashing the paint on, I'm just moving it around. I'll go over that more in detail in the next video. I'm starting a new painting. It's exciting. It's a portrait. I'm scared to death. Should be fun. Yes, horses do not trim their nose hair. Well, as you can see, that's the final thing. The final push is to put all the little hairs in place. I did omit some. They have crazy facial hair. Some of them, they just come out of nowhere and go crazy. I left some of those out. I neatened them up. But, I really love this project. Really, really do. There's the final. Blue Paint Horse is finished. I appreciate y'all joining me and watching. Thank you for subscribing. And I hope to see you guys soon. Happy arting. Bye-bye.